Start today's broadcast. It'll take me just a minute to go through them. Okay. Sound check. Alright, that looks good. Alright, that one looks good. Sorry, just have to get things set up. It's taking me a bit. Give me just a second. Okay. Alright, it looks like everything is going smoothly. So... Alright, so tonight is going to be a long writing club meeting slash lesson. I pre-recorded it, so I will just be hanging out in the chats, whether it's over there or down there or wherever I have the chat actually open. Where is my... Sorry, I'm just getting everything going, and that can take a minute. So like I said, it is going to be a long one. It is the history of fanfiction. This is something that I am interested in. I've been doing stuff with fanfiction since the early 2000s. So it's been over 20 years of me being in fandom spaces. So fair warning, I may end up using I say it in the thing, but I may end up using terms that you might not recognize. If you don't, there is a lexicon or a dictionary at the beginning. You can look up terms there. I tried to keep it as clean as possible, but there are some controversies which involve things that the algorithms might ding us for. So when they get to that part, I will be using other terms in order to avoid getting hit by the algorithm. So it is 4 o'clock officially, so I am going to get that started. Like I said, I am going to be hanging out in the chat, so I'll either be over there or down there or wherever the chat function is. Ask questions there, I will answer them. Alright, and we are going to get started. I have to switch the screen. The History of Fanfiction from Dante's Inferno to AO3. We will start this today. It is our May 2026 writing club meeting, so let us go. This is going to be a fairly longer one. This is something that I am interested in, so you are going to get to listen to me blather on for probably about an hour. So before we can even really start on the history of fanfiction, we need to know what is fanfiction. Fanfiction, also called fan fiction or fanfic, just where you are and what time period you're in is what kind of spelling you're going to get. They're stories involving popular fictional characters that are written by fans and often posted on the internet. And this is from Merriam-Webster Online Dictionary. In essence, when it comes to fanfiction tends to be the I don't like how that went and I can do better. It would be so cute if these two characters, even if the two characters are not in the same universe, go together. Nobody dies. That is a very popular one as well. More pain, all the angst. Sometimes you just want to bully your favorite characters, and then there's stuff like copy shop AUs, AUs meaning alternate universes. Basically, it's. Do you remember when you were a kid, if you're my age, and like you would go and play like Power Rangers at recess? That, except as fanfiction. Except written down as fanfiction. Now, I'm probably going to slip and say a lot of things, terms that you might not understand. I will try and catch myself, but I have been in the fanfiction space since the early 2000s, so over 20 years. So a lot of things I think is completely normal to say, you might be going, huh? So I did find this lovely little guide to fan fiction terminology with some examples down here at the bottom. The citrus scale that's going to tell you how spicy something is. It was how spicy a fan fiction was before we had the term spicy. Uh, no beta, we die like character that dies in whatever fictional media you're doing, and dead dove do not eat. These also come up a lot as tags on Archive of Our Own, which we will get into in further down the line. So I do suggest if I say something that you don't understand, check this lovely fanfiction lexicon to see if that make more sense. All right, as I said in the intro, I am going to start off with a very early version of fanfiction, biblical fanfiction, The Divine Comedy by Dante Alighieri. Alighieri. It is basically a self-insert. Many of the characters are people who Dante knew, or they were politicians in Dante's time, or important people in Dante's time, especially in the Inferno part. Um, so this it's an epic poem. How can I explain this better? So a lot this poem it is a poem, and it explores the condition of the soul following death and portrays a vision of divine justice in which individuals receive appropriate punishment or reward based on their actions. This could be considered a fan fiction because it does take a lot of its background from the Bible, making it a biblical fan fiction. And historically, this has shaped how heaven and hell are viewed in the modern lens. You know, the whole seven rings of hell, um, that kind of thing. That's something that was codified underneath in the Divine Comedy. So it is fanfiction can be something that has far-reaching consequences. Another interesting one. Don't know if everyone here has read Don Quixote or is familiar with it. There was an unofficial sequel called Segundo Tomo del Ingenioso Hidalgo Don Quixote de la Mancha, or the second book of the ingenious knight Don Quixote of La Mancha by Alonso Fernandez de Avellaneda, which was probably a pseudonym. It was an unauthorized sequel and had a there was very low critical opinion about it, but it is a fan fiction. At its core, it is a fan fiction. Um, the actual official sequel or part two by Cervantes is Segunda Parte del Ingenioso Caballero Sic Don Quixote de la Mancha. Uh, that is the actual sequel. This Segundo Tomo is the unofficial one. And in fact, like I said, no one knows who this person was. There are theories, but there is no general consensus. At the time, Cervantes did know that Avellaneda was a pseudonym and that the volume's publication information was false. Cervantes also indicated four times in the second part that of his Don Quixote that Avellaneda was from Aragon, which is an important. Um, which could be Cervantes saying that this is where the person who wrote this is from. But, yeah. Sorry, I have to get through my notes. I have a ton of notes on this. So, this came out before the second part that Cervantes wrote. And in fact, there are references made to this unofficial sequel, which we'll get into in just a bit, um, within the work itself. There is, of course, like I said, Avellaneda being referred to. Um, the guy who wrote the Segundo Tomo actually insulted Cervantes a lot. So Cervantes kind of fired back in Don Quixote. There is there are some scholars who think that the second part of Don Quixote, as written by Cervantes, is actually is much better than the first, partially because of this unofficial sequel. All right. So what I'm saying is fan fiction is old. It is not something new. Uh, it is something that has been controversial for a while now because this was controversial when it came out. Now we're going to go on to talk about something that you may see nowadays: pastiche, and unofficial sequels. Pastiche, um, it's a literary, artistic, musical, or architectural work that imitates the style of previous work. This is from Merriam-Webster Dictionary Online. I don't know how I got the arrow in there. It wasn't meant to be an arrow. It was supposed to be a comma. Um, for example, there are lots of unofficial Sherlock Holmes books that came out after Doyle. In fact, the Sherlock Holmes Doyle's estate um, still sues people about it. One that comes up a lot, one that comes up with my reading that I've done, is Sherlock Holmes appears in some Arsène Lupin texts where he loses to Lupin. If you don't know who Arsène Lupin is, I'm probably horribly mispronouncing it. He was a French thief, fictional French thief, and his stories were being written at the same time that Doyle was writing the Sherlock Holmes. The author of the Arsène Lupin series put Sherlock Holmes into his stories, and Doyle ended up suing him. So he had to take Sherlock Holmes out and it brought in, I do believe, Herlock Sholmes. I do believe, yep, Herlock Sholmes. Yes, Maurice Leblanc. I'm not certain if he sued or if Doyle was just unhappy and objected to it. In the more modern printings of those, it may have been turned back into Sherlock Holmes, but of course, Mark Twain wrote a pastiche of Sherlock Holmes imitating Doyle's writing. Agatha Christie's done it. Ellery Queen and Nero Wolfe are other ones that have been. I mean, even now, Mark Twain and Agatha Christie get pastiche or unofficials. When it comes to unofficial sequels, you're going to see those more along the lines with things like Penny Dreadfuls. Conan the Barbarian has a lot of sequels that weren't written by the original author. Um, yeah, by Robert Howard, yes. But there are many sequels that have been written after their unofficial ones. So that happens as well. It's the ones you're going to see mostly nowadays is going to be modern retellings of classics. Things like Pride and Prejudice get made into other books like this. Uh, King Lear retold. Just thinking off the top of my head, the movie 10 Things I Hate About You is a pastiche of, or a retelling of Taming of the Shrew. So it's still something that happens. It can technically be considered a fan fiction version, um, because you are taking an idea or a writing style and mimicking it. So it does happen. You can even find fan fiction that is doing that. Specifically, I've seen Sherlock Holmes universes where in a, like, let's say you have two characters, you pick two characters from a TV series, and suddenly you turn them into Sherlock Holmes and Dr. John Watson. Except they still keep their name. It could be in the modern day, but now they fight crime or they hunt down criminals. And you may decide you want to do it in a Sherlock Holmes style. And that would be a pastiche, a fanfiction pastiche. Alright, we're moving on from the historical stuff. Bit of technical difficulty. Give me just a moment to try and get it fixed. Where did my sound go? Oh my goodness, the sound just cut halfway out through the whole thing. I am so sorry, people. Give me a minute, I will pull it up and we can go from there. I do apologize. That is so annoying. Okay, give me just a moment to pull up my slides. Again, I apologize for that. Technical difficulties. Alright, there's that. We will go into presenter mode. There's that. Alright, okay, I think we were at Star Trek and the Birth of Zines. Okay, now the sound's back. Now the sound is back. Okay. Sorry about that. Technical difficulties with the recording, so I'm going to have to go in live and hope that I remember everything from my notes because I don't have time to pull them all up. So, Star Trek and the Birth of Fanzines. The Comet was the first fanzine. It had a sci-fi focus. That's usually... Oh, that's the fanzine. The first actual cons... there's some debate over whether it was... give me... There's an argument over whether it was PhilCon or WorldCon. Both of them happened in the 1930s, so that's why we will say the birth of it happened. Now, a fan con specifically for a specific specific like focus group you're going to find something like that as like Spock, as like a Star Trek um, is usually pointed at the first like fan group organized for a specific IP, and that was Star Trek, and it was usually put together by the women. So in fan spaces, you will quite often see people saying to recognize your fandom grandmothers because they were the ones who were doing the organization. Fanzines. It's a mixture of the words of fan and magazine. One of the more famous ones is Spockanalia, which started circulating in the 1960s, specifically 1967. It was made by fans for fans, and you could find these distributed at cons, or you would be put on a mailing list, which you would get on by going to the cons. It's not like today where you can just hop on to a Discord server and it'll be on there. No, you actually had to go and talk to people in person. Usually there was a limited cost. Producer of Spockanalia at one point said they were lucky if they made 5 cents a copy. So generally, these are going to be free or low cost. It can be a very good way for people to get out their writing out there, or if they do, some of them have articles and essays, some of them have art, some of them have competitions. It just depends on the type of fanzine that's being put out. In fact, nowadays you will find them mostly in the digital spaces. Going on to the next slide. All right, we're talking about fanzines. I can't skip talking about doujinshi. Uh, Doujinshi is it's Japanese, although you'll find these also in Korea, China, pretty much any market in Asia is going to have them. Uh, Market meaning like literary market. They are self-published works. They are not only fan fiction, but they are also original works too. They are not all. A good portion of them are NC-17, the stuff that you can't buy unless you're 18 or older. Let's put it that way. Um, they are technically illegal, like most uh, fan works are. However, you will find that, at least in Japan, the IP holders don't tend to go after them unless it's like, Disney. Disney will go after the people who are doing doing fan art sometimes, many times, because they have to protect their trademarks and IP and copyright. If you don't protect them, then you can't enforce them and you lose your copyright. It's long and complicated. Um, However, in Japan, it is quite normal for manga artists, and writers to not, and their publishers to not really be picky about it, because it does encourage a fan community and can spotlight new artists. There are many mangaka that actually started as doujinshi artists. If you are a child of the 90s, I was born in 87, so my memories of the 90s, uh, Clamp, that would be your Cardcaptor Sakura, XXX Holic, Tokyo 1999, um, Tsubasa Reservoir Chronicles. They started as a doujinshi group. Ken Akamatsu. I know I looked these guys up when I was recording this. Hang on. Ken Akamatsu, if I remember correctly, is a politician. He's the one who did Lafhina and Negima Magister Negimagi. Maji. It was serialized in Weekly Shonen. He was a he did doujinshi. Uh, and he actually sold his works at Comiket under the pen name Awa Mizuno, or Mizuno Awa. Um, Kazuse Takashima. She's famous for yaoi manga. She also did a number of light novels. She was a doujinshi artist from 1999 to 2000. Their big works are Harlem Beat wa Yoake Made, Wild Rock, Dragon X Boy, which was discontinued, Kingyo Hime, Inu mo Arukeba, Falling in Love, um, and Hiroe Rei. I know that name. Sorry, I read so much that I don't remember the authors' names completely. Oh yeah, sorry, I should know this person. They're the one who did Black Lagoon. Um, they worked on they work on Dojin comics underneath the name Red Bear. This is also the person who did Black Lagoon, which is an awesome manga if you ever get a chance to read it. Um, but yeah, this is part of fandom in Japan, and it's quickly spreading elsewhere. Yes, a lot of doujinshi are going to be uh, things that you cannot buy unless you are 18 or older, or should buy unless you are 18 or older. But some of it is not. All right, next slide. The internet era. So we are entering the what I consider to be the modern era of fan fiction. All right, early modern era, you're going to get things like mailing lists and news groups. This is before we had dedicated websites. This is where people would write something and send it out to the group as a whole. You would there would often be a person who was the mod, or it would be run by the originator of, say, a fan work. You had to have a link to join, or you had to give your email to the person who was running it to join, and this was often done again at cons. Now, these are where you start getting the beginnings of the archives that I'm going to be covering soon. These could be for a specific fandom, these could be for a specific genre, or it could be for fan fiction just in general. You just had to be invited. So it was very much a invitation system. And you would get the notices in your email, or you'd be given a link to a database. So this was the kind of thing that happened, let's say, early 90s, late 80s, early 90s. Then in 1998, we get fanfiction.net. Uh, this is one of the earlier specific to fanfiction sites. It is arranged by media type, i.e., meaning anime and manga have their own section, books have their own section, video games have their own section, and then it's divided into the individual title. So you would, to find like Percy Jackson and the Olympians, you would go into the book section, and then you would look for Percy Jackson and the Olympians. Sometimes they are divided out into author. For example, Janet Ivanovich is, I believe, underneath, all of her stuff is underneath Janet Ivanovich. Sometimes it is by the title of the book. It just depends on what you're dealing with. Then there's also a separate section now for crossovers. There are millions of stories on there. Even before they brought in the crossover part, there was a section that was like, bear in mind, this is the late 90s. The biggest anime out at the time that was easy for the general populace to get a hold of was the stuff that was on Toonami. So there were a lot of Sailor Moon and Dragon Ball Z crossovers. A lot. They had their own section on fanfiction.net. Now, they used a rating system that was the same up until 2005, that was the same as movie rating system. So you had your G, your PG, your PG-13, your R, and then your M. Well, in 2005, they received a cease and desist letter from the Motion Pictures Association of America, and they had to change to the system that they have now that's like K, T, and M. I think it's been a while since I've been on there. I prefer Archive of Our Own if I'm reading fan fiction. There are more controversies. I'll get to later into the controversy part of this speech, but AO3 is one of the grand pappies of fan fiction. Alright, now we're going to move on to the more ones that I don't know that much about off the top of my head. Okay, now you have LiveJournal. LiveJournal's big era was around the early to mid 2000s. It's often abbreviated to LJ, and it was mostly a social networking website, but this is where you started getting stuff like interaction outside of reviews. This is where you start getting into things with fan fiction and meta and the meta behind it. This is where you start getting fan groups and communities and the solidification of fanfiction terms and staples. This is where you start seeing terms like RPF or real person fiction, or seeing real person fiction reduced down to RPF. Hurt comfort, fix it, impreg, these kind of terms. This is also where you start getting things like Fickathon and challenges. Fickathon is like a marathon, except you're writing fanfiction. And then there are challenges where someone will say, put out a prompt, and then a bunch of people will write different stories about it, and you all swap them and see which one you say is best sometimes, and sometimes it's just for the fun of a whole bunch of people writing about the same prompt and seeing what y'all come up with. Now, LiveJournal did its fall was around 2007 due to certain things that happened in after it was bought out. I will be covering that in a little bit. Next up, we have Tumblr. This is where a lot of people who were on LiveJournal migrated to Tumblr around the mid 2010s, early to mid 2010s. That's its heyday, a lot of people say, but it's still going. I'm still on there. It's my favorite place to look for challenges, prompts, just general fandomness. It does have a community focus, and it does require you to self-regulate your feed. If you don't want to see certain things on your feed, you need to stop looking for them. Or if you want to find certain things on your feed, you have to go looking for them yourself. So that's why it is not the most popular. Its algorithm is weird. It is like I said, it's a large community focus. There is a lot of things like round robin storytelling where someone will put out like, okay, one of the fandoms I'm involved in or I follow very closely is the Danny Phantom and DC Comics crossovers. Someone will stick out a, hey, I wonder what would happen if Bruce adopted Danny Phantom, because Danny ran away from home after a bad reveal and I don't know, he got turned into a ghost cat that was adopted by Damien, the newest Robin. Someone would put that out, and then a whole bunch of people will write stories about it or would write their interpretations of it, and they would build off of each other. So that's why there's a lot of checking the notes on Tumblr to describe and explain things, or to find what I'm talking about. You have to check the notes to find anything. However, one of the bad sides is there is a lot of toxicity that happens in Tumblr. Like I said, you have to self curate. If someone's causing problems, you just have to block them and eventually it'll go away. But there is a lot of toxicity, but that happens in most of the interactive fandom websites already. It's sort of a gotcha. Next up is Wattpad. This is your 2010s, and it's not just for fanfiction. This may come up later as I'm discussing it, but so Wattpad is, compared to the others, it has a very mobile focus. It is not just fanfiction, it also hosts original things. There's also advertising, which is where you start getting into some legal issues around fanfiction. It does have a rating system, kind of. Your content is either for all ages, which is 13 plus, or mature, which is 17 plus. They also have contests. This is also where some people who have manipulated the algorithm on Wattpad for recognition, it happens. It happens on anything that has an algorithm. This is also where you're going to see a lot of fan fiction that get picked up to become their own books via all of the stuff that identifies them as fanfiction getting scrubbed, and it's fanfiction with the serial numbers filed off, is how some people refer to it. This is stuff like After by Anna Todd. Not exactly my cup of tea. It's not my genre. Uh, but that whole series was originally a One Direction fan fiction on Wattpad. Interestingly enough. All right, now we go on to my personal favorite, Archive of Our Own, or AO3. 2008, and it is a nonprofit tied to the Organization for Transformative Works. It is all volunteer and is run through donations. It was founded by people who were affected by strike through and bolt through, which I will be covering up in the next few slides. Uh, it is now in open beta as of April of this year. It has one of the most robust tagging systems, and dear lord, do I wish we had it for every single book in the library. It would make it so much easier to find stuff. The people who work on the tagging on AO3, thank you if you're watching this or anyone ever sends you anything about it. You people are wonderful. Like I said, it is all volunteer. It is an archive of at heart, so they will put anything on there, which has caused some controversy, as some people do not think there should be certain things on AO3. Certain things that would, if I said the words, would probably get the our accounts flagged. It is stuff relating to children and certain things that should not be happening to children. Alright. Then you have your more specialty sites. I listed two. There are more. These are just the two that I know off the top of my head, and that's Twisting the Hellmouth, which is a Buffy the Vampire Slayer fanfiction archive, and FIMfiction.net, which is a My Little Pony Friendship is Magic fandom. Specialty sites will often focus on one fandom, possibly one author, and a lot of them are actually migrating to AO3 because, like I said, they are an archive, so they will take in stuff from other places and archive it. Alright, now I'm going to talk about the dark times, aka the controversies. What are the dark times? I'm going to be covering things like legal issues, author controversies, website controversies, the monetization issue, and the AI issue. I want it on record, I don't like AI. So when we get to that part, a lot of that is going to be my opinions on things and things I have researched, but I know I'm not the only one who holds those opinions because I see them repeated many times through all the stuff I read and all the fandom discourse and fandom parts that I am in. Alright, first off is the legal issues with fanfiction. Fanfiction is not legal. It is in fact a violation of copyright. Go bring this up. Switch to this. The Office of Intellectual Freedom with the American Library Association. Their blog actually has this lovely little thing about copyright and fanfiction, a primer. I do recommend going there and reading it. It is covering things about fair use, transformative works. Why is there so much fanfiction if it's illegal? And some basic takeaways of different things. I do recommend checking it out and also checking out the links that it has to fanlore. I did use fanlore a lot when I was making these slides. There is things like derivative right, work rights, and the fair use doctrine. Again, these are very complicated legal subjects, so I can't really cover them in depth. Basics is fanfiction is technically illegal. There was a point in time where certain authors, Anne Rice, would send out cease and desist letters, and it was a time of terror for the fandom community. You did not write Anne Rice fanfiction. Anything from her stuff, you did not touch, because she would send a cease and desist letter to you. There are a lot of authors who are on the books saying they do not want their stuff being written, having fanfiction written of them. J.R.R. Martin, Orson Scott Card, those kind of people don't want it written. Archie Comics, Diana Gabaldon, Terry Goodkind. Again, fanlore. They do have they do keep a list of authors who have discouraged and encouraged fan fiction. There are quite a few authors who do. Tamora Pierce is one of them. I follow her on Tumblr. She actually encourages fan fiction so long as you're not making money off of it. All right, quick list through of some website controversies. I mentioned this one before, strike through and bold through on LiveJournal. So what happened? What was strike through and bold through? So when you were on LiveJournal, you would see a list of your friends. And suddenly on May 29th, 2007, when you went onto LiveJournal, you might suddenly notice that a lot of your friends list had lines through the names. Well, those were accounts that had been suspended. Over 500 journals based on user interest list interests that were likely to get the journal banned included, but were not limited to pictures of children that really should not exist and can get you in big trouble with the government. PDF stuff, forcing what happens when you force yourself on someone else, domestic violence, paying people for certain actions that involve no clothes, things like that. Journals that list other things like murder, crime, drugs, tax evasion, election fraud were not banned. Just interests relating to SMEX crimes were the targets. This ended up deleting a lot of RPG journals, book discussion groups, survivor blogs, and some fanish groups, including the large and popular Harry Potter fanfiction community Pornish Pixies, which was an age-restricted community for adult HP fanfiction. So, a few months following strike through, then there was bold through, which was much of the same, just instead of the usernames of your friends being struck through, they were bolded. This is actually the This actually was hot on the heels of another thing I'll be covering in just a bit called FanLib. But this is around the time that people started coming together and the first proposal for Archive of Our Own and the Organization of Transformative Works started to form. So this is the event that caused the consolidation of people together to make AO3. Alright, fanfiction.net controversies. I already covered the MPAA thing. Then there was multiple purges. For example, there was the... Let's see. Alright, there was the 2002 real person fiction ban. In 2002, they banned RPF fiction. That 2005, they updated the terms of service to ban adult content, and that was then updated again in 2009 to do the same thing. The purge of NC-17 content happened in 2002 and 2012. In 2010, there was the unannounced forum purge, where there are message boards, or there were message boards on fanfiction.net, the forums. In 2010, there was a massive unannounced purge of a lot of these forums, and a lot of fandom history was actually lost. So, as a result, about 22 million posts, 66% of all posts made, were deleted during the purge. Then in 2004, there was the ban of the script format, and in 2005, there was the ban on the choose your own adventure / self-insertion fic / reader insert / second person fic, also known as the U-fics or U-based fics. 2005 was the song fic ban, and then there is the whole number C. Sorry, I'm going over these really fast, mostly because I don't want to keep you guys here for too long. Next up is the monetization issue. Fanfiction.net's part of its what pays for its like server fees and stuff is they run ads, a lot of ads, and there is some fanfiction's already in a legal gray area, as I said before. In fact, fanfiction's illegal, and making money off of it makes it even worse. So there is a lot of worry by some people that fanfiction.net is going to go into trouble from having ads on their website. That can happen. Alright, similar to fanfiction.net, Tumblr has also gone through several purges. I have lived through most of them and have actually witnessed them. It was quite interesting. Alright, so let's go over these lovely things. In 2018, Tumblr announced that the non-safe for work ban would go into effect on December 17th. This would ban photos, videos, and GIFs showing real-life human genitals or female-presenting nipples, which was an interesting thing at the time, and any content including videos, photos, GIFs, and illustrations that depict sex acts. So that was one of the things that caused a lot of Tumblr blogs to disappear overnight. Is the not safe for work stuff still there? Yes, it is. Give me one moment. Do you have a paper signed by your adult? What's your name? No, your name. Yep. Kite, K-I-T. I am not seeing one for you. Okay, and what was your name? Last name? Because I'm not seeing a paper for either of you guys, so I can't let you on the computers. Yeah, I can't let you guys on the computers unless I have a paper and I'm not finding one. Yeah, I can't let you play on the computers unless I have paper. I'm sorry, guys. You can play on the Switch. If you want to play it on the TV, you can just slide it into the thing. Yep. Sorry about that. Let me go through this. Okay, that. There's also the. In 2021, Tumblr announced there would be Tumblr Post Plus, which was the premium content service that basically there were some issues about monetizing it. And in 2002 of November, Tumblr updated the terms of service to include a ban on depictions of fictional minors in certain situations. So this is a time when there were caused several unexpected account terminations across the site, so this was another one of the purges. Now we get into the fun part. FanLib. Was I around for this? Yes. Did I pay attention to it? No. So FanLib was a commercially owned fanfiction archive that content was generated by fan creators. it was largely perceived as an attempt by outsiders to profit from the work of fans. So, in essence, on FanLib, you would write fan fiction and be paid for it. And there were some IPs that would allow for it to happen. Star Trek was one of them, the L Word. But in doing so and submitting your work, you would forfeit your rights to what you have written, allowing it to be used for commercial purposes, usually without you getting paid. Just after a year, after it was launched in 2007 and it was bought in 2008 by Disney, and Disney shut that down fast and hard. So, that's what happened to FanLib. Now, I have briefly touched on AO3 and censorship or the lack of it. One thing that gets brought up a lot with Archive of Our Own is how you can find anything on it, and you need to curate what you are looking for yourself. If you look for certain tags, you will find those tags. If you exclude those tags, you don't see them. But there are a lot of people who believe that certain things should not be on AO3 at all, which is counter to what AO3 was formed around, which was the events of Strike Through and Bold Through, where those blogs, as I said on LiveJournal, were just erased with no recompense, just because of what content they had on it. This is getting very much into the pro-ship and anti-ship wars that are currently going on, which nowadays you may hear pro-ship meaning problematic ship positive. That isn't what it means. It means you are pro-shipping. There's a lot of etiquette in fanfiction that doesn't get talked about a lot, but really should. There is a lot of things like, I don't like it, but I'm not going to say anything about it. I'm just going to leave and read. There's the don't like, don't read. It seems a lot to me and to other people I've spoken to in the fandom space that since the pandemic in 2020, there have been a lot of people coming into fanfiction and not learning the etiquette needed to survive in this space or to make it a positive space. Keep going down. Keep going down. It's the next door. Yep. Right there. Right there's the. Yep. So I can see both sides of the issue. People don't want certain things involving children to be viewed at all, even if it's just in writing. Other people are saying if you censor one, where do you stop censoring things? I can see both points. It is really up to the person, you guys who are listening to me talk, to decide. Alright, I've only got a few more slides left. Alright, monetization issue. There are a couple issues around this. I will cover them both. One is the fair use. Basically, fair use's strongest point is that you're not making money on it. So when you start making money on it, that's when things start to go very wrong very quickly. If you go onto Etsy right now, you can find people who are making and selling bound fan fiction. And that is a big no-no in the fandom community. Like I said, post-2020, there have been a lot of people coming into fandom spaces and not learning the etiquette. To me, who has been in fandom since the 90s, this to me is just a horrible thing to, like, when I heard about it, I had to do a quick double take and like, you can't be serious. There are people selling bound fan fiction, selling fan fiction on Etsy. They are. Now, if you are making it for yourself, that is a completely other matter as you are not making money off of it. However, the moment you start making money off of it is the moment you start really, really putting yourself out there for risk of being sued. Then there is also the other side of monetization, and that is the part I was talking about earlier with Wattpad, with you can publish your fanfiction so long as there is no copyrightable material within your fanfiction. Recently, in the past few years, we've had a whole lovely horror series focused around Winnie the Pooh and things like Popeye, Steamboat Willie. Those things have entered the public domain, which means anyone can use anything about them. But they have to be like the base. Like, you're not going to be able to use a Winnie the Pooh with a red shirt because that specific version of Winnie the Pooh is owned by Disney currently. That's why I believe in the Winnie the Pooh movie they didn't have Winnie the Pooh in a red shirt. But you get the rough idea. That's the kind of thing going on here. So, a lot of people who write fan fiction and then get it published, i.e., Twilight or 50 Shades of Grey, they will take a fan fiction that they've written, they will change the names of all the characters, all the locations, they will rewrite, for instance, magic systems, and that will be how they get it published. There are people who are in fandom spaces who do refer to it as filing the serial numbers off. That is one of the things that is done. So that to get something able to be published. Some of these things are popular, but you will also sometimes hear these things that they are poorly written. You can say that about just about any book in existence, I'm sorry. But that is how some people do manage to get their fan fiction, and I'm putting that in finger quotes even if you can't see me. That's how they get their fan fiction published, is they remove all of the elements that were copyright, that were an identifiable part of a certain series, and that's how they get it published. They just erase it. Now for the part that I get to rant about, the AI issue. There are currently two main issues with AI. Three, technically, if you want to go into the environmental issue portion. One, AI companies have data mined sites like fanfiction.net and Archive of Our Own in order to train their language models. Now, the type of AI I am talking about in these is language model AIs, the ones that you type in something and it will spit a story back at you. For as much as a fan fiction writer, you do not own anything that is owned by the copyright owner. Anything new you add is yours under copyright, as I understand it. It's a very complicated issue, but basically, if it is your original thing, you invent an original character, you invent an original place, and you put this in your fan fiction, that is yours. And these companies have taken that, and it may be in the language learning model that they have created. And that is a serious copyright violation. There is also the environmental issues. As I said, every time someone uses AI, it does, I think I've heard it's about the equivalent of using up a bottle of water. Not to mention the high electricity cost, how the sound and heat from those data centers that house the AI servers can be causing all sorts of environmental issues. I do encourage you to look this up yourself. This is just what I have found for myself. There is a potential of a data center moving into the area I live in, and there are a lot of people protesting about it, complaining about it. So that's why I've had to look up some of this stuff. Another part is uh, the legality of using AI to write anything. There was recently a case, Thaler v. Perlmutter, where the end result, don't quote me directly on this, but there was a lot of, let's see if I can, so where it's a landmark US case from last year confirming that AI generated works without human authorship cannot receive copyright protection. Now, this doesn't mean much for your fan fiction. Fan fiction already doesn't really have copyright protection much because it is a violation of copyright. This ruling reinforces a previous ruling that, believe it or not, is from a National Geographic picture being taken by a monkey. Yeah. So, basically, at its core, it is a US legal case that confirms that AI generated content works without human authorship cannot receive copyright protection. So, you need to remember this with your writing fanfiction. As I said, you do retain, to my understanding, copyright on the original things you add in. So if there are any questions, feel free to put those in the comment section. I will get back to you. I do encourage anyone who is interested to join our writing club. We are currently working on getting a writing workshop scheduled for sometime in August, we do believe, as part of our adult summer reading program. Speaking of summer reading program, yes, I'm back. Speaking of summer reading program for adults, the Battle of the Clintons starts on the 25th of this month. That is Memorial Day and goes until August 31st. The children's one starts June 1st, and the theme for the children's one this year, children's being anyone from like preschool all the way up to seniors in high school, 12th grade, what they're going into next year, is Unearth a Story. So there's going to be a lot of dinosaur theme. It's not going to be solely dinosaur themed. We have other stuff too, but we're leaning into the dinosaurs very hard. We are going to have, there's going to be something at least every Thursday in June for the kids. For the adults, we are doing stuff on Monday evenings. Again, I will have next month. I will also have a writing club meeting. It will be covering writing realistic dialogue. I do know that is a problem for some people, and I have found a few tricks that work for me for helping to keep dialogue sounding like talking. So if there's no questions right now, do feel free again to add questions here or email me if you are on YouTube or Facebook. My email is attached. There's also a link to our Google Classroom. I do suggest that going there. I do post up resources from time to time, contests, writing prompts. It's just whatever I find that I believe will help people with their writing journey.